are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I am Dylan Larck, A-Boy Tank on Twitter. Talk to you about the latest in Auburn football news because we are fresh out of the bye week, getting ready to travel next week to Missouri, take on a top 25 team who, looked pretty impressive despite the fact that they played against UMass. But today's episode is strictly going to be talking about, can the Auburn Tigers find a way to win 4 out of their next 6? Is a bowl game feasible for Auburn in 2024? Now, 2025, a whole other discussion. We're going to talk about 2025 all throughout the season because you know what? This is not our year. Maybe 25 will be it. But kind of just looking down the list right now, I went through and looked at every game that Auburn has to play thus far in War Eagle season. I see your comment. Talk about looking at every game Auburn has left to play on the schedule, and these are the last 6. Traveling to Missouri, Auburn is currently is projected to, it only has a 32.3% chance to win that game. Next week, you travel to Kentucky. You only have a 43% chance to win that game. Then you back at home for Vanderbilt, where you have a 56% chance to beat Vanderbilt, which I think is way too high, and this probably has not been updated ever since last week. And then, of course, you got a bye week for ULM, where you got a 90.3% chance to beat the Warhawks. And then you got the last 2 SEC games of the schedule, where you're not projected to win either one of them. Texas A&M, 35.2% chance. And then, of course, the Iron Bowl, which holds the lowest of the season, 11.1. So, looking at those games, I mean, I'm not too confident in Auburn's ability to find 4 wins there. I think 5 and 7 is about where you want to be. And I mean, the projections even say that. But looking down the last stretch, we're going to talk about Missouri all week. So I'm not going to spend too long on this show talking about Missouri, because Thursday, all about the Tigers of Columbia, Missouri. But they played against UMass yesterday, and they had a field day, 145-3. Brady Cook threw for 219 yards. They rushed for 230 on the ground. Their leading receiver was Joshua Manning, but Luther Burden III was second on the team in both receiving and rushing. That Missouri is a really good team who got absolutely dismantled by Texas A&M last week, and it honestly didn't. I mean, I don't think A&M has less talent than Missouri does, but it was a shock to see Missouri kind of fall down like they did. That loss, but there was a build-up to it. Missouri definitely had some slow games. You play against Vanderbilt, who, I mean, that win kind of looks better than it did a couple weeks ago. It took them to double overtime. Boston College gave them a run for their money, all building up to A&M absolutely blowing the doors off of them in College Station. Now, Missouri is still no team to look down on. I think Auburn does have an opportunity to get an upset there. Auburn hasn't looked terrible. That's the issue with Auburn this year, is they've not looked terrible. There have been moments where this team has looked like they don't know how to play the game of football, but for the most case, this team has looked better than last year, but they just don't know how to do one thing that has been killing them, which is finishing the game. You're only playing a couple of quarters of the game, not the full thing, or you're putting yourself down early and not able to climb out of the hole you dug yourself into. That's happened multiple times this season, and honestly, it just comes down to that going forward. Can Auburn get out of this slump? Was 2 weeks of practice with no game, 2 weeks of rest. Was that enough to turn Auburn's season around? Now, if you beat Missouri, I'm very confident in Auburn's chances to get 2 more wins after that, or to get 3 more wins after that, because I think that makes Kentucky a lot more beatable, makes Vanderbilt feel a lot more beatable. And then, of course, I think ULM is, of course, going to be the one game on the season where I'm not a pessimist about. Auburn could go 3-9 in a streak, and it's because the SEC got better. Vanderbilt's one of the most exciting teams to watch. They're currently ranked number 26 in the nation right now. Should be in the top 25, but for some reason, AP voters love Michigan. Don't know why. But going to the next week against Kentucky, I mean, Kentucky just had a had a hard fought loss to Vanderbilt yesterday, and then they beat Ole Miss. They gave Georgia run for their money, but they're also that game where they got whooped by South Carolina. But this game being in Lexington, that makes this game a lot harder for Auburn, because the best Kentucky has looked was in Lexington against Georgia. And of course, yesterday Vanderbilt kind of took it to him. Diego Pavia looks outstanding, 143 yards for him through the air. And then, of course, 53 on the ground for him. And he's just been the absolute reason why Vanderbilt has been such a dominant force offensively. But Kentucky's defense is no laughing matter. That defense is going to give Auburn fits. And if Auburn's not out of a slump that they've been in for the past, I guess now 7 weeks of football that they've been playing, 8 if you count week 0, that's going to be an issue for the Tigers in Lexington. And I mean, I can't remember the last time Auburn played Kentucky in Lexington. I think it was 2016, where Auburn got like a narrow win. These next 2 games have an opportunity to be a absolute brawl to the end, where it's going to feel like neither team is going to want to win until the very end of the game. That's what I think these next 2 games could feel like. But Auburn projected 43%. That's like the second highest percent chance they have to win, or third highest, not second highest SEC game. And then, of course, Vanderbilt after that. Now, Vanderbilt has been on a little bit of a tear lately. Of course, they lost to Missouri and lost to Georgia State, but they beat Alabama 40-35. They didn't just beat Alabama, too. I'm going to talk about this as much as I possibly can, because I love talking about this game. Vanderbilt dominated Alabama. The scoreboard's not going to show it, but 42 minutes of possession for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has a team that's built up around Diego Pavia, where they will have a game plan, and you have to find a way to make them change it. You have to find a way to get them out of that game plan. You have to find a way to get Diego Pavia to make mistakes. And now, Auburn's played against him before. They kind of know what to expect, but he does have more talent, per se, on this team than he did at New Mexico State. Eli Stowers is a very good wide receiver. But Vanderbilt should be a beatable team for Auburn. They should be. On paper, that's what it is. Auburn is a more talented team than Vanderbilt is, but you have to find a way to make Vanderbilt realize that, because they go into every game with a chip on their shoulder. They are going to bite at your ankles until you fall down, and you have to find a way not to fall down, because that's what this Vanderbilt team is. They are built around, we are going to make you suffer for 60 minutes, and you have to find your own way to beat us. That's what they're going to do. Missouri had to find a way in double overtime. Georgia State had to have a miracle play at the end of a game to win against Vanderbilt. And then Kentucky and Alabama weren't able to do it. So going forward, I mean, Vanderbilt is a game you should have circled on the calendar right now, because that game is going to be electric, especially because it's going to be in Auburn. And now I don't know what time that game will be at. I'm hoping they're saying noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be 11 to 12 is where that game is slated to be at, which I think is a crime. 11 a.m. kickoffs suck in Alabama, just because it's always going to be hot, no matter what time of the fall that game is going to be at. And then after that, you get a bye week, getting ready for ULM, where again, ULM is 5-1 in the year. Their one loss is to Texas. They've beaten UAB, which UAB is a very bad team. This year, they took down Troy in a close win. Troy, I don't think is a great team. JMU I don't think is a good team as they were last year. Took them down, and Southern Miss last night took them down. Auburn should win this game. Of all the games left on the schedule, this is the one where I'm like, Auburn is going to win this game. I don't think General Booty is going to do all that much against Auburn's defense, even though I don't even think he's the starter anymore, which he's not even the leading passer, so I don't even know where he falls at anymore. But yeah, I no feasible way, knock on wood, because New Mexico State last year, no feasible way where the Auburn Tigers lose to ULM. At the worst, Auburn is finishing 3-9 this year. At the very worst. Now, after that, you round out your SEC slate. Texas A&M has looked way better than I expected this year. Now, they're winning with talent that they brought in with Jimbo Fisher and were able to keep on as Elko came in. But Texas A&M is currently 5-1. That lost to Notre Dame, and they turned it all around. I mean, they took down McNeese State, which of course they were. Took down Florida in dominating fashion. Struggled against Bowling Green, but Bowling Green actually has been giving a lot of teams fits. Beat Arkansas in the last iteration of that game being in Dallas. And then, of course, 2 weeks ago, whooping Missouri. This game is going to be tough. Auburn's a 35% chance to win this game. I don't think it's going to end in Auburn's favor. A&M is a lot better than, again, what I give them credit for. I think Elko was the right guy. Right? I thought Elko was the right guy as soon as he was hired, but I thought he was going to need a year to coach this team up. Turns out all he needed was a couple of months. A&M looking like they could be a shoe-in for a 12-team playoff as long as they keep winning out. I don't think they have to play. I know they have to play Texas down the line. But after LSU in 2 weeks, I mean, they don't have a ranked team until November 30th. So this could be a 10-2 Texas A&M team when it's all said and done at the end of the year, because I'm not too high on LSU this year. But with A&M, you're looking at passing a true passing quarterback. I think Connor Wegman might be the last of the single threat quarterbacks Auburn has to play this year. I don't know too much about UL Monroe's guy they have. I think he's a little dual thready. And then lastly on the slate is, of course, the Iron Bowl. This game is in Tuscaloosa. Alabama has looked the most beatable they've looked in years. They're finding ways to take themselves out of ball games. They almost lost to South Carolina. They did lose to Vanderbilt. And I mean, ultimately yesterday, it took South Carolina taking themselves out of the opportunity. Like, South Carolina beat themselves more than Alabama did, giving up fumbles, throwing bad interceptions, just making bad reads down the field if you're Lenore Sellers. And the offensive line just completely gave up on them on the last drive of the game. Like, there was no blocking whatsoever. But just kind of looking ahead I'll pull the slate back up. Auburn is going to have to play the best brand of football they possibly can over these next 3 weeks or next 4 weeks. Because I guess 5 if you count the bye week. Because A&M and Alabama, I don't want to say that I can trust Auburn right now to win either of those 2 ball games right now. Auburn has had a whole week of practice, and they're going to have a whole other week of practice preparing for this Missouri game. I don't know what this Auburn team is going to look like versus Missouri. This could be a whole new look Auburn team for all I know. All I know is there were things they had to fix. And this is the game to prove that you are willing to fix your team. Looking at Auburn from against Georgia, the offensive line, at least the left side of it, Percy Lewis, played the worst game of the season thus far. You have to find some way to adjust for that, whether it be putting Dylan Wade out to the left and putting someone in at guard, or putting Tyler Johnson out there and keeping D. Wade at the left guard position. You got to find something that works for that now, because going forward, I mean, I don't think you have a true you don't have a real major defense to play against until you play, I think, A&M. I think for the most, Kentucky. So you have a week to kind of find a defense that you don't have to worry about a pass rush as much. Then, of course, the next week, Kentucky, they have J.J. Weaver and a few other guys who are going to wreak havoc. Running the ball. Auburn needs to find a way to continuously run the ball in a football game. For the love of everything that is holy in this earth, run the football. Run the ball. For the love of everything. I don't understand this Auburn team. I have been ranting about this for weeks now. If Auburn wants to score offensively, they need to have an established running game. no matter what. We saw the touchdown that Jarquez Hunter got against Georgia's defense. Now, Georgia's defense isn't the best defense we've seen for the Georgia Bulldogs in the past 3 years, but that run was electric. Jarquez Hunter has been the most, outside of Condre Lambert-Smith, who is going to go down as an Auburn great because he's going to have the single best one season wonder of an Auburn wide receiver ever. Because I fully believe that he, knock on wood, barring injury, I fully believe he's going to finish with 1,000 yards. He's going to finish with 1,000-yard season. Now, Jarquez Hunter has to be a part of your game plan throughout the remainder of this season. Without Jarquez, this offense can't do anything for 4 quarters. You can only throw curl routes and down the field shots to KLS and Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson and all those guys so much before the DB starts sitting back waiting for it. You need to start running the football. Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb need to be utilized more in this offense. I don't understand the complexity of that. I mean, I understand that your game plan, you want to run the RPO. I think it's time to move away from it. I think now going forward, your play should either be a run or a pass with no option to do either in a play. It hasn't been working this year. It's very few times where I think Auburn has actually ran it against a competent team to perfection. It's time. It's time to move on from it. Down the field passing game, it's been going well, but the RPO only works when your quarterbacks are making the correct options on the play. Just saying. And then ultimately, wide receiver room. I don't have many complaints about the wide receivers this year. I don't think the only thing I can really say, and I think Lawrence Robinson just said it for me right here. Valdo needs to be utilized more in this scheme. Now, I understand that we have the freeze for. We got KLS. We got Robert Lewis, who's hasn't been having like an explosive season, but has been a reliable target on short passing plays. You have a great wide receiver core. You also have a loaded tight end room. You have Rivaldo Fairweather. You have Mike O'Reilly. You have Rico Walker. Luke Deal, I think, I don't know if he's still hurt or not, and Brandon Frazier. You got all these guys who, as a unit, are one of your more underrated groups on the team. Utilize those more. Goal line situations, tight end should be on the field. All 4 of them should be on the field to block. But you gotta have a tight ends in today's football world. I mean, look at Michigan had a good tight end last year. Georgia had Brock Bowers for the 2 years they won a championship. You gotta have a good tight end, and you gotta know how to use them. Even Hugh Freeze used Evan Ingram back whenever he was at Ole Miss. I mean, you have used tight ends like this before, and Valdo is a weapon. I don't think we saw Valdo get used in the Georgia game until very late in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Either that game or it was the last game. But yeah, I mean, it just the weapons that Auburn has that's not being used, I think, is just such a painful experience to watch. It makes it so much worse to watch this team play because you know what they have. You know that Rivaldo Fairweather is the most reliable target on the field. You know that Jarquez Hunter is always going to be good to get at least 3 yards whenever you need him to. And then you take him out of the game. You move on to someone else. You try to throw down the field. You try to throw the RPO. You try to do something stupid. And then you cost Auburn any opportunity of getting points or getting back into a football game. Fire Freeze. I can't really agree with your name right now. And I won't agree until I'll see Auburn not making any changes next year. Which do you feel is more likely? Freeze checks his ego and features the running backs, or Freeze runs the ball more ... with PT. I think if Freeze wants to win games this year, against those teams that I've mentioned earlier, like the Missouris of the world and of the Vanderbilt and, Kentucky, you got to run the football with Jarquez. You got to run the football with Damari. You got to run it with Jeremiah Cobb. Peyton Thorne offers you more of an opportunity of like broken sacks and more opportunities of getting plays done with his legs than any other quarterbacks on the field in the locker room right now. Honestly, I think that the running backs are going to be featured a lot more. I think after 2 weeks of practices and getting just the 1 week, and I hope someone asks him this in the press conference for tomorrow, is how much more do you plan on do you want to run the ball with the running backs? Because you're seeing stats don't lie. Jarquez, if I pull it up real quick, is averaging 6.8 yards per carry, 78 carries, 528 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jarquez should have like 6 or 7 touchdowns by this point of the year. But against Georgia, he only had, he only had 13 carries. But the best offense Auburn has had this year, and I'm going to go back to OU and UN and New Mexico, Jarquez had 17 or more carries. You have to implement him more in the game. And I hope that's the more likely option, and I hope that's the option that Hugh Freeze is going to go with, is giving the ball to the guy who is carrying the offense at this point. If it's not KLS, it's Jarquez Hunter. Feed him the football. Lawrence Robinson, Auburn can beat Missouri with the game plan they used against Georgia. I agree to the sense of if they have a heavy run game like they did, I think ultimately it came down to Auburn's offensive line really screwed them up and took them out of the game for the most part. But Auburn played a decent game against Georgia. That game was a lot closer than it appeared on the scoreboard. And Peyton Thorne, to everything I've been saying thus far, he did not play. He had a bad play in that game, but Peyton Thorne did not have a bad game versus Georgia. He didn't make any mistakes, turnover-wise. Auburn there's just a little bit more adjusting that needs to happen to that game plan. There's the taking players out of the game that are doing the most damage. Jamari Alston only had 4 carries against Georgia. And he was averaging 5.5 on those carries in and of himself. And Peyton Thorne had 13 carries and had 22 yards, but most of those taking up sacks. But you found holes in the Georgia defense. And you can find holes in Missouri's defense. They've not been perfect either. And I would say that Missouri, pretty lucky they don't have to play against Georgia, because their defense would get even more embarrassed than Auburn's was able to. Auburn has weapons that can get it done against Missouri. It's all about when it comes down to it. When they get to Columbia, Missouri, will the weapons be utilized, and will they play to their maximum capacity? Now, Missouri is, again, I don't think Missouri is the team I thought they were earlier in the year. I thought Missouri was the 3rd best team in the SEC. I was proven wrong. I think they're still high up there. I think they've fallen down a bit. But if I were to re-rank them, it'd be Texas without a doubt. Georgia at 2. I'm almost going to put Vandy at 3, but I don't think I can right now. But Ole Miss is kind of falling off. LSU, don't know what LSU is. Alabama, they're kind of falling out of grace, which I love so much. I actually had a rant that I'll probably talk about later on, because it annoys the mess out of me whenever I talk about Alabama and the excuses they give. But if you go into the Missouri game like you did against Georgia, if you can do what A&M did, finding ways like that, attack the defense where they're the weakest, and run the football, Auburn can beat the next 4 opponents with ease if they just do what they are strongest at for 60 minutes of a football game, instead of just playing for a half, instead of just playing for 3 quarters, instead of just playing for whatever they were doing against Arkansas or whatever they were doing against Cal. It's just the infuriating part of this team is because they have so much talent. And it's not an excuse that you can use anymore because the talent is there. It's just play calling and execution of it. That's all it is. Lawrence Robinson again, getting McPherson back should help too. Remember, Auburn missed a field goal at the end of the half against Georgia. Yeah, but that also got blocked. So I'm pretty sure that one got blocked. So I'm not gonna put too much of Towns on that one. I think that was the only one he missed against that game. I think he came back pretty. Thing is, like, McPherson is the best kicker on the team, but we've seen Towns make these kicks before. You're just putting a freshman in a bad space because he has to do things that he was not prepared to do. But outside of the Oklahoma game, I mean, I think Towns is. I'm not going to put too much. I'm not going to put any. I'm not going to put any slack on Towns for coming in as a true freshman, having to take over for just a wild situation he had to come into. Again, can we also get the defense to force a few turnovers too? I mean, they had a nice little streak there for a couple of games where they were getting interceptions. I mean, they had the Oklahoma and Arkansas game where they were forcing turnovers. It's just kind of, you with Missouri. I'm trying to let me pull up Brady Cooks because I don't know if he's had any interceptions this year. I know he probably has had a couple. He only had one. I don't know how likely it is for Auburn to force many against some of these top teams. Vanderbilt's been playing very safe with the football. And I mean, they I don't know. Oh, Kentucky, maybe. I might say Kentucky could be probably one of the teams you could try to force the most turnovers out of. But I mean, Missouri and Vanderbilt will take care of the football a lot more than like Kentucky will. But you kind of got to go down. Teresa Towns just needs to get some high pressure experience. I think asking him to do one over 50 early on and missing may have hurt his confidence a little too. Completely agree with that, Teresa. Completely agree. I forgot what game it was. I think it was Cal. They put him out there to kick a 54-yarder, and yeah, he made it during A-Day, but that was a little stupid to put him in there during a. I think at that point you just need to just chunk it down the field. But yeah, I completely agree that definitely harmed his thing. I think that Mayday drill due to poor clock management shook his confidence. Then the long kick was cheeks because he was already rattled. Completely agree with that one too. I don't know why you didn't just like clock it. That was just bad. That was just bad that was all on freeze because you caught a play where the first read was a pass to the middle of the field and you just threw everything off a loop. But you also got a second chance at that. And college players, I mean, I'm defending Towns. But when you get a second chance at a kick, you got a little bit of time to kind of get yourself composed and aim it a little better. But yeah, I mean that first kick was fully on freeze and just execution of that play. But I mean, honestly, I want to say, going back to the earlier conversation about Auburn and this chart again, I want to bug about it. I want to say Auburn can win 4 games out of the next 6. I want to say that they can. But it's so hard for me to make that judgment call when I've not seen this team win. I've not seen this team know how to win yet. I've not seen them play 4 complete quarters of football. Oklahoma, I saw them play. I thought I was going to see them actually get it done. I think beating Oklahoma would have done loads of restoration to the confidence of this team. And then everything fell apart at the end. And then kind of going to the Georgia game, for a second, it looked like Auburn was going to stay in it. And then something didn't go their way. And then it became a 31-13 final score. I mean, I don't think Auburn played terrible, but they just didn't do enough to win the football game. Now, going forward, you have Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. This is despite everything else, this is the biggest stretch of the season. And this is something we've talked about this before. This month just absolutely sucks for Auburn. You had the 5 straight home games, which sucked because, you got 3 straight away games. But this stretch is going to make or break whether or not Auburn gets 4 wins. And for you to get a bowl game, I think you have to win this entire stretch. You have to beat Missouri and Columbia. You have to beat Kentucky and Lexington, and you got to beat Vanderbilt and Auburn. And they're beatable. These are winnable games. And hopefully the bye week was able to help you get everything settled for that. And Lawrence just said Auburn can win all of them, but like you said, they got to finish games. Yeah. There's 60 minutes in a football game, and you can't win it by only playing 40 of them, or only playing 45 of it, or only playing 30 of it. You have to win a football game playing all 4 quarters of the football game. And hopefully a bye week changes that. Hopefully something ignites and sparks in this team, and they come out swinging against Missouri, take all of that momentum into Lexington, then continue it and beat Vanderbilt, and then beat UL Monroe, and then they have 6 wins on the year. They're 6-4, and you have A&M and Alabama. Which then, if you lose those games, you're still going to a bowl game, and you still get to find a way to play in December. But all you can do is just hope and pray. I mean, Alabama in Tuscaloosa, different vibes if Auburn can win out. If Auburn can beat Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and UL Monroe, and then be competitive against Texas A&M, I mean, I've been so unimpressed with Alabama this year that it's hilarious. And believe me, I have been loving the fact that they lost to Vanderbilt for 2 weeks now. 15 days to the day, or not 15 days, it's 8 days to the day. I love that they lost to Vanderbilt. It is the greatest thing ever. And I think that they're getting called out for the fraudulent team that they are, but the AP poll still wants to keep them up there. And the rant is about to start, because the most annoying thing about Alabama, and Georgia did this too, when Kirby Smart won the national championship, he went on his high horse and said that everyone predicted his team to go 5-7. And now Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, and then they almost lost to South Carolina, but Shane Beamer cannot finish a football game either. And then Kalen DeBoer went on his little soapbox and talked about how much adversity this team has to deal with. Alabama football doesn't know one thing about the word adversity. Not one. You're underperforming. You have a top 5 blue chip ratio. You have a top 5 top 5 most talented roster in college football. Not the SEC, not Power 5. College football. All 134 teams, you have more talent than 129 of them. You're not dealing with adversity. You're not coaching your guys right. That's what that is. It's not adversity. You just aren't coaching right. I am so sick of that excuse whenever these major teams lose games or look like crap on the field. It's not adversity. You just didn't coach correctly. It's not adversity. You just didn't call the right plays. That's what that is. Nothing is going against you. Nothing isn't going your way. Because South Carolina deals with adversity. That is the team that has to deal with that. They have everything going against them. They don't have the most talented roster in the country. They're still trying to build up from the years of Will Muschamp. Florida is dealing with adversity, trying to figure out how they're going to get through the remainder of the season and finish with a bowl game, because Florida has looked pretty good as well. Alabama doesn't have that excuse, and they're not allowed to use that excuse. It is so stupid. It's so stupid. And then the media lets them say it. It's so stupid. So dumb. My beautiful girlfriend was sadly in the room with me whenever I heard Kalen DeBoer say this. I went on a 10-minute rant that I love her to death, that she sat there and listened to me talk about, because she knew I wasn't gonna stop for a little bit. But it just annoys the mess out of me when I hear an Alabama football coach talk about dealing with adversity,. when you're there just underperforming. It's so dumb. That's my rant. That's my 2 cents on the matter. Oh, it annoys me so much. Fire Freeze again. How much is Freeze getting squeaky in pressure situations, rubbing off on the players from play calling to execution? It just looks so much worse in the red zone or on critical downs. How much is Freeze getting squeaky in pressure situations, rubbing off on players? I'm not too sure. I mean, I kind of go back to that Peyton Thorne audible or whatever they're calling it now. I mean, I think they kind of messed up by saying Peyton Thorne didn't change the play. He changed the play. I don't know if it's rubbing off on the players. I just know that that Hugh got mad at Peyton Thorne for changing his play, and everyone else knew what the play was. The only person who didn't like the play was Peyton Thorne. So next year, there's no more excuses. Whenever you have your guys coming in, you have Hank Brown coming back for his third year on the plane. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. You'll have a redshirt freshman behind him, Walker White, a guy that Hugh Freeze has been coaching up for a year. And, of course, you have Deuce Knight coming in as a guy who's probably going to be redshirted because he's going to be more of a what's the word? Developmental piece down the line. So I think a lot of it goes both ways. I'm not going to put all the blame on Hugh Freeze for this year. I think there's a lot of outgoing factors that going against Auburn a lot of the times, but ultimately I think that, I predicted 8-4. Maybe I was booging a little bit. Next year, I'm going to raise my expectations for this team. You got the same schedule. You play against two FCS team or two G5 teams. You play against Baylor, who that should be a win. And then of course you have the same SEC schedule as this year. So before I start judging, I'm gonna judge Freeze constructively for this year and going in the next year. But if Auburn's 2-4 next year, maybe start the hot tea conversation. But for right now, get off of it. We'll get through this together because Auburn doesn't need to be the team that's always firing and hiring coaches 3 years down the line. I know looking down at UCF right now, who just currently lost yesterday to who did UCF lose to? They lost to was it Cincinnati? They lost to. Which go Bearcats? Yeah, they did. Yeah. I know a lot of people will say they miss. I loved Gus Malzahn, but I don't miss Gus Malzahn. Give Freeze some time. Give him till next year. And then we can start the whole hot seat conversation. If he's 2-4 next year, start the conversation. Ask you get permission from me. You can start the conversation next year if it's 2-4. But just next year, the excuses don't work anymore. Their talent will be there. It'll be his guys all in there. And, the schedule will be a little easier. You got Georgia still. You got Bama still. They're going to be at home. You have Missouri at home. You'll have Kentucky at home. And shut up. I mean, a nice way possible. Shut up. It's only year 2. A hashtag. Yeah, let's not start that again. But we're going to get out here. It's 40 minutes. I appreciate everyone for stepping in and voicing their opinions on the matter. Let me know, what do you think Auburn's record will be over the next 6 games of the season? Do you think they'll finish 4-2 and finish with a bowl game? Do you think they go 6-0 and somehow find a way to be 8-4, which I would love, because then I would be right in my prediction. I would have got the games all wrong, but I would have gotten the prediction right. Or do you think 3-9 is in the future for the Auburn Tigers? Let me know in the comment section below. And, of course, don't forget to check us out on social media, on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the works, all those at The College Loop. And, of course, you have me as well at YouBoyTank, as well as at Dylan Larck on Instagram, DYLANLARCK. And, of course, audio versions of the show as well on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, of course, Amazon Music, all those at The College Loop as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Getting so close to 900 subscribers, getting so close again. If you were close to 900, getting close to 1,000. So getting close to that as well. And, of course, all that being said, thanks for watching this installment of the College Loop Podcast. And as always, War Eagle.